We'll start again here. All right, first question to come through. It's a long one, so I'm going to kind of paraphrase it. But basically, moving from the pro to the scale plan, looking for best practices on documents and file roles as they relate to trigger conditions. Yeah, so I wish I was in my other account, but we'll go ahead and wing it in here, and we'll just kind of talk through it. So big things to think about when you're moving from the pro to the scale plan and actually working with triggers here. Let's see here. Whoops. Let me go back to where I was. Shoot. All right, I'm having some screen difficulties because I'm on a small screen today. All right, here we go. Okay, so first thing you're going to have to think about is I would just go through your, the big thing is going through tasks and just turning them into triggers. We talked about this a little bit last week, but thinking through like, okay, this is send opening emails and I have a bunch of opening emails in there. Instead of having all those triggers inside of the task, just take the triggers and make them their own trigger over in the trigger menu. Now you'll be in the, you will be in templates. So just so everyone knows where that is, under the hammer icon in templates, and you're going to be under trigger templates. Now, one thing you're going to want to pay attention to here on trigger templates is when you create a new one, you can name it whatever you want, but right here, there's property triggers. Those are the ones that we're going to talk about next. You have your task triggers, which I think everyone's familiar with, the triggers that sit inside of a task when the task is completed or not completed by a certain date. And then the intake form triggers. So don't accidentally click on one of these two if you're trying to create a template for property triggers. And then on the right side, you will see that these are property triggers here. Let me see if I don't even have any intake triggers, I don't think, in here. No. Oh, here, draft. Let me change the category to buyer. Let me see if I have any other ones in here. Yeah, see, you can see the difference here. Task template, property template, intake form template. So just make sure that looks correct before you get going. Okay, let me go back over to the transaction. And let's go under triggers. So the first thing you're going to have to watch out for is, well, let's go back to the question, actually. Love some best practices on documents and file roles. So let's go over to documents. So, and one of the things they mentioned in here was the earnest money. So let's talk about that first. So, and these are going to correlate to your fields mostly. So you're going to want to set up fields most of the time. Sometimes they can be file roles and sometimes they can be contacts, but you're going to want to go ahead and trigger these from those three things. So if EMD is received, then that may trigger something. If it isn't received by a certain date, that's where we have to get into some workarounds, okay? And you may want to just leave it as a task, because as a task, you can say, if this task isn't done by a certain date, then go ahead and do these actions. So some of the, if it isn't done, you may want to keep in a task for now. The things that are done, or you can change a field to not completed yet. So if this says not completed and I still don't have the file role by this date, then go ahead and send this. Okay, so what I have in my earnest deposit fields is a field that says, has it been arranged? Okay, and the reason I put has it been arranged is because someone may call me in the morning and say, hey, after work today, I'm going to run over and drop off the earnest deposit. Well, I don't want to accidentally send them out an email about how to get it there, and we still need it and things like that, and make me look stupid because they just called me. So instead of having, I also have the received, right? And I put a date in the received. I think that the fields with dates are a better option than saying yes, no, completed, not completed, things like that. The only reason is because that date serves two functions with one field. Now you can say, if the date appears in this field, so if this field is not blank, do whatever I need to do, okay? If there's no date in there, then it's, if this field is blank, do this. Okay. And then the other field that I mentioned, has it been arranged? That's just so it doesn't accidentally go out. Like emails don't accidentally go out of the system with your VA or someone sending these emails, because you got that phone call in the morning that they are going to get it over there at 3 o'clock today. You don't want to send an email hey, we still need this, please hurry up and get it over here. And they're going to be like, hey, I just called you this morning, what the heck's going on here? So for earnest money, I always recommend, an earnest money received with a date. And then I also, has it been arranged? And that's just for if it's not actually there yet, but it's been arranged. Okay, let me look at the rest of this question here. So trigger reminder email. Yeah, so if the EMD role doesn't exist a day after due date, so that's what they're asking about now. So how you would do that is you would just say, if the field EMD received is still blank, and if the file role is not present or doesn't exist is the way it says it in the program. So if that file role doesn't exist and the field is still blank and it's one day after, so you're going to set on the triggers, you can set immediate triggers. Do an email. Let's just apply whatever here. Okay. So you can see the due date and time 1 day after contract acceptance. So here, sorry, my screen is so small today. Okay, so 1 day after contract acceptance, or you can do immediate. So up here in the time of day, here's immediate right here. And that's going to go out as soon as the conditions are true. So if this file role doesn't exist and if this field is still blank, it's going to go immediately. So you don't want that, because immediately when you open the transaction, it's going to think it needs to go. So on things that aren't done, typically you're going to have a day and time. It's like, hey, if it's not done 1 day after creating the file, I need to send this. Or if this isn't done 1 day after the inspection period, or 5 days after, or 5 days before closing, or whatever your situation is, you're going to want to come down here and put a date and a time on it. So 8 o'clock in the morning on Friday, or 1 day after, earnest money was due. If I still don't have it, go ahead and send this email out. And then you can also, depending on your state, and make sure you have your rollbacks correctly. If you're rolling it back to Friday or rolling it up to Monday, or if you don't want any of these, just don't set them. Okay, so that's how you do the reminder if EMD file does not exist and it's 1 day after the due date. You're going to want to set a time. You're going to put 1 day after, and then this would be EMD due instead of contract acceptance on this one. Okay. How do you decide which file roles to automatically apply in the various templates versus applying the document when it comes in? It's a really case by case on that. We're going to have to probably sit down with you and just go over individual scenarios and talk about individual scenarios, because it differs so much depending on what you're doing. Sometimes a task makes sense, but most of the time you can do it through a trigger, and then which file role, when it's applied, all that stuff is very specific to your situation. So it's really hard to get into. I can give you a couple examples, but it's really hard to get into and kind of know what you're trying to do with that. Let me skip down here. Intros. If I want to use file roles to condition triggers, I wanted to make sure there isn't a way to have it automatically apply in templates, but only exist when a digital file is uploaded. Let me reread that, because I'm not sure what you were going for there. Wait, automatically apply in templates. No. Okay, so I know what you're saying. You're saying if you want the file role to automatically apply, yeah, there's a setting for that. So if you come over here, what this person is saying, let me get to the right spot here. Global settings. It's a gear icon, global settings. If you come down here to default, you're going to see these file roles right here. So trigger file role conditions. Should trigger file role conditions be processed if the file placeholder, which has the conditional file role applied, does not contain a digital file. So here you're going to say, no, the actual file must be in here. So that purple paperclip next to the file, that has to be highlighted, or else this isn't going to process. Now, if there's some reason, and I don't think I have any thinking back on it, but if there is a reason for you to preset that, if the file role exists, a lot of the times people that aren't putting documents in open to close use that one. So as soon as I put the file role on it, even if the document doesn't exist, go ahead and process this because they're keeping their files somewhere else. I think you're losing a lot of the functionality of the program. So I definitely wouldn't advise not keeping your documents in open to close, but there are some people doing it. So that kind of protects them so they can still have that trigger functionality. For you though, you're going to want to make sure that the file must exist. So I have to put that file in there because the upside to that, and I think you touch on it later in your question here, but when that file exists, now you can have it automatically attached to a document, right? So over in your templates, you can have a email, and let's just say it's this email. And this email is going to trigger when that file role comes in. But then you can also come down here and automatically attach that file as well. So not only is that new file role coming into the transaction triggering this email, but it's also attaching that file to this email as well. So if this was like, hey, your EMD, we're just sending out something with a copy of the receipt or something, as soon as that EMD receipt gets uploaded to the documents, it triggers this email and then it attaches the EMD receipt down here as well. So that's where the power comes in. Let me just scan the rest of this and make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Yeah, I think we're good on this question. Kylie, if you have more or want to add on to that, feel free to type it in there, but I think we're good on that one. Okay, I have some triggers, email that could be sent automatically. That's not an option in OTC, correct? How do you handle those? As a lot of triggers that need to go out daily. Yeah, we don't have the automated turned on just because it's a huge liability. We're going to be working on that. I'm actually working on it right now to see what we're going to have you guys do as far as like sign something to say, yeah, this is okay. I'm going to take full liability for everything that's going out automatically. What we don't want is, you have 3 people working on a file. One person doesn't know what was said to another person, and all of a sudden they change a field and an automatic email goes out. An automatic, template goes up to the health bar. An automatic text goes out. Like all this stuff could possibly happen just by changing a field. And if you don't have good communication, you don't have good systems and processes in place, it could really screw you up. And what we've seen is, there's a lot of people with, they're still working on their systems and processes. So let's put it that way. And so we're a little bit scared to release this to everyone, the automatic send, but it definitely will come in the future. It's just a matter of when and, how we're going to protect and how we're going to educate the people coming onto the system so that they don't accidentally have it sending automatically when they don't realize that that's what's happening. So how do you handle them? I would say that you do, I would just say log in, have them go to the health bar and, what most people are doing is logging in the morning, logging in once in the afternoon, and then they're just hitting send. What you could do, but it's still the same process really, is you could have them in a task where you check the task and then they automatically go out by here. Let me just move that over just so people understand what I'm talking about. So in the tasks, it's still the same amount of remembering though. In the tasks, if you come under options here, you can see that you can turn this on and it will auto send. But there's still a fail-safe, right? The fail-safe is you checking off that task. And so we don't have anything just automatically flying out of the system. Now, if you say when the task isn't complete, there is a little bit of a workaround here. You could say when the task is not complete by a certain date, send automatically. Okay, so send task is not, and then send automatically. There you go. So now when that task isn't completed by 1 day after that task was due, now you can send. These are great for contingencies. I typically still don't have them auto send just because I want to get eyes on them. But if you have specific things, I think the big things that you can use it for is like, hey, the sign went up in the yard. Hey, the photos were taken, the blah, blah, blah. The emails that are going out to your agents, if you're an independent TC, or even if you work on a team, the emails that are going out to agents are less risky because they're a part of your team. The ones that I don't like to make automatic are the ones that are going to clients or vendors, because you could look stupid if you accidentally send the wrong thing out at the wrong time, and then it looks bad, looks poorly upon your business. So, but we'll be working on that, Amber, and I'll definitely give you an update in the future. The ones that need to go out daily, just for the meantime, you're gonna have to send them to the health bar and just hit send.
One thing, if I may, just chime in there.
Yeah.
I run into with certain builds where I do have like a set of deadline reminders, let's say, where I'm not really needing to change the content or the body of that message. I just need to get it out quickly, is throw in a quick like acronym. Maybe for that, it's just like deadline right in front of either the template title and your details. So that way, when it does go to your health bar, you have a quick reference to know, hey, this isn't one that I need to make a lot of changes to. This is one of those daily reminders that I can quickly spot check, send. So
Yeah.
just a little bit more. Sorry.
No, I was going to say that's a great suggestion. And the ones that you want to automatically send without checking, because we started doing this, was on our text messages like, hey, the sign went up in the yard or something like that, that you know that there's just no way it could be wrong and you're sending that no matter what. Just put the word like auto in front of it, kind of to piggyback off what Jana's saying. You can just put auto and you know that you don't even have to look at that. So, anything else to add to that, Jana?
No, that was perfect. Thank
Okay.
you.
And just to jump on with what you guys are saying, it's really useful for those situations where you're sending more of a reminder. It's not like a cultivated email that I want to send out to somebody or a message I want to send out to somebody. It's more of a, hey, just so you know, something happened, or hey, we're still waiting on this. With task, we might have a task trigger set to say this task hasn't been completed yet. I'm going to send out a message automatically saying, hey, just a quick message. We're still waiting on so-and-so.
Yep. Yeah, I think a lot of those automated, thanks, Matthew. I think a lot of those automated messages that we send on our team, like I said before, is 2 agents, 2 people on your team, 2 people that if you accidentally send out an automatic email to them, they're not going to be, pissed and think that you suck as a TC or whatever. These are the people that are just, they already know you, you're sending those out. And then as you get more comfortable, right, as you're on the program, and I know Amber, you've been on the program for a while, but as you get more comfortable with the way that things are sending and when they're sending and all that, then it's going to be a lot easier for you or someone like you to turn on those automated emails versus someone that's only been on the system for a month or 2 or 3, right? Because you're still learning and you're still setting everything up and you're still testing. So, all right. Todd, is it possible to set the default details tab by intake form type rather than by transaction? Example, for a buyer intake form, always set the default to transaction details, but always set the listing details for a listing intake. If not, is it a reasonable enhancement request? Yeah, it's a great request. Definitely put that in the idea lab. That's great. A lot of people will just make it part of their process when they're first starting. So when they come into a transaction, when they come into a transaction, it's going to they put a what do they call it? Internal details or internal instructions. So on your template, you can put internal instructions. And obviously, I know what you're getting at. You want to get rid of having to do this. And believe me, I get it. But in the meantime, you can have those internal instructions, go to your settings and change these 2 things. So then they can come on settings. And that's your thing anyway. You have to like zones and your texting number and all this other stuff. So while you're in there, you can, where is it? Oh, here it is. So default details would be your transaction details in this case. And then your default communication tab would be whatever one you want. So there you go. So every time, just to explain these real quick, just in case someone's on here that doesn't understand these. So the default details tab, this is your fields. So what fields do you want to pop up on the left side of your transaction every time you log into it? What field group, not what field section, but field group, the overarching group. And then down here, it's what tab do you want to open every single time? So if you're always in tasks, if you're task heavy, you may want to open up the transaction to tasks every time you open it up. Or if you're documents, you just want it to open up the documents so you can see what's going on every time you open up, you can default to documents, you can default to contacts, you can default to messages, default to whatever you want. And that is right here. So which tab do you want to open up automatically? Okay, we are out of questions. Anyone else have any questions?
Well, I'm just going to piggyback on that real quickly. The internal instructions, which I don't think we actually like showed it on screen here, but those are very useful because it'll give somebody some instructions when they have a new intake form comes in. Hey, make sure you do this. Set the communication tab, set the defaults, details tab to be whatever you want it to be. You can put that in there. It's obviously not automatic, but it is a way to make sure that step is being done in the process. So the internal instructions, very, very useful.
Yeah, the other thing with internal instructions is you have to determine what's an internal instruction versus what's a task, right? So, and how you're going to determine that is it something that needs done before you create a transaction? So if it's something that you have to do before every little time, and make every time, because you start a transaction detail that they can't, an internal instruction that they can't. After the transaction has been started, then create a tag for it. You don't forget to start like, hey, make default tab in your default communication is what it needs to be. So just think about that, creating them, and if you need help, reach out to support, but just think of it as internal instructions or before the transaction starts. Tasks can cover after the transaction starts. Okay, it looks like the next commissions template class isn't for a month. Can you give us a high-level walkthrough of how to create a template and a few of the options? Sure. Is that right, Jana and Hannah? Is that next month for the commissions?
Yes, we don't actually do a full deep dive just yet on commissions with our group sessions, more so because we're focusing on foundational aspects of an account setup, and commissions for a lot of users is something that they layer into their core process as they're building. So it'd be a great opportunity to go through it on this.
Sure. Okay, so commissions. If you didn't see how I got there, I went into a transaction that I know has a good template in. So you would be in your templates, but I actually went into a transaction because I know that there's a decent template in this transaction. Yeah. So here's Hannah's commission, the logo. You can pop a logo up here. You can create widgets. So the widgets would be like, do you want buyer Jill, right? Here's another buyer, Aaron. You could have the closing date. You could have the listing date. You could have whatever information you want to get over to the person you're sending this to. And here's another thing, Todd, I would say is you don't have to just have one. If you're on the upper tier plans, you have unlimited. Okay. And if you're on the pro plan, I think you get 3. So what I would suggest, if you want to really dive into this, and not right off the bat, but as you get more comfortable with it, you could have one commission disbursement for the title company or whoever you send it to, right? You could have another commission template for internal. You could have another one for that goes like QuickBooks data, one that goes to your agents. You could have a bunch of different ones with different information. Just be real careful if you're using the same fields here that you're not overwriting the information from field to field. So make sure there's only, one field on each one. Okay, so here are the widgets. You can put whatever you want in there. These are any of the fields. So you can just say whatever you want, and then you can create, oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said fields. This is totally custom. So you can create whatever title you want here, and then you can say is contact role, here's the field, and then a blank. So if I choose field, add that as a widget, and there you go. Now I can choose which field data I want to come in there. And there you go. So that obviously this title wouldn't make sense anymore because I would probably want to duplicate that field to a certain degree. Like if this is earnest money, you may want to word it a little bit different for the person that's receiving it. So that's why we made these fully customizable, because your field may not make sense, right? I name my fields all kinds of crazy stuff, just trying to save room, like HOA due days. Like nobody knows what that is. So if you had to duplicate that over here in widgets, you can type whatever you want in that field for that field title, and then it would make sense to the person you're sending it to. Okay, so top level, you got your purchase price that came in from a field, I'm sure. Let's see here. Yep, here's the purchase amount comes in. Now, the one cool thing you can do over here is you can just input the fields. Okay, you can input the fields that are the variable numbers here that could change, right? You put those into the beginning of the transaction, and then you can have those fields come into the template. So when I apply that template, it's going to take this field data and it's going to put it in here. Because this 3% on this could be 4%, it could be 1%, it could be, you know, $500, whatever it is. This buyer side commission could be different. So you want that to pull in from your field. So you're saying, hey, this is a 3% commission in this example. It's going to grab that data and pull it in here and start calculating. So once I know the 200,000, right, purchase price, and I know what this is from one of the fields that got copied in here. Now I know that the buyer side commission is 6,000. Now, and you can see these dotted lines. This is the split. Right. So this dotted line is one split. So there's nothing. Oh, I'm sorry, I went a little too fast there, but there's nothing else on this split. So this is the top line commission breakdown, 6,000. Now there's another line, and I can see that there's a couple different splits on this line. I can see that there's a team split, 50%. So that got calculated 3,000. Agent split, 3,000, 50%. Okay. And then on this team split, they're going to split this again and pay a transaction filing fee out of this 3,000. Okay. So they're left with 2,650 on this side. The agent split is gonna, well, this doesn't really make sense if I'm given the team. Okay, brokerage. Yeah. Okay. So they're paying $600 to the brokerage here, 20. And then the showing agent split is $300, 10%. Okay. And they're left with, well, let's see here, 600. Why'd that come out there? I got to check this. Are we adding something here? Are we subtracting? Let me see. 20%. Okay. I don't know why that says 3,000. I'm gonna have to check that. And you can split this as many times as you want. I think actually the developer told me it goes up to 20 or 30 times. So if you have anything more complex than that, you're going to have to get a hold of us anyway. Now I'm going to go back and talk in detail about some of these things. So these buttons here is just whether it shows up on the report that you're going to print from this. Okay. So if you want the step in there, you want the calculation, and you want the step total. Okay. Here's the total calculation, going to be that 3%. If you look over here, you're going to have some more options. You're going to have the math operator. So you can choose that field for it to come in. So this would be like the commission percentage, right? You would choose that field that you want that to come in from. Also the calculation sync at $6,000. Do you want to assign this to an agent, right? Because we're going to have the totals from the fields. We're going to have buyer agent commissions, and you're going to be able to see that you paid your buyer agents $250,000 this year, but you don't know how much Bob and Susie made individually. So this is where this comes into play, where you can actually stick an individual user in here, and then that individual user will be able to you'll be able to report on that individual user as well. Okay. And then you got the sync split total as well. And so that's down here.
And then stress the difference of the two with those. Your sync calculation, I like to think of that as my gross. That is the initial calculation that you see right next to the title of that step. And the split total is going to be what's in the gray box at the bottom of that step. So if you follow the dotted line, for buyer side GCI, at the bottom of that line is going to be the end total, which would be that option that we saw there. So the 3,000 right above the 6,000.
Oh, yeah.
So think of that as your net, typically, how I separate the two.
Yep. Thank you. That was good. Yeah, these lines are helpful because you can kind of follow them down, especially when you get very complex and you have, you know, an ISA working on the file, and you have a buyer agent, you have a showing agent, and you have a brokerage split, and you have a, you know, a donation that you're doing, and all these things. It really adds up, and this thing gets really long. So just pay attention to that. If you want to add a step, you can add a step here. If you want to delete a step, you can delete a step here. Just be really careful and use a real world, like when you're setting up your templates, have a fake transaction here that you can apply it to. And then just know your numbers. Make the purchase price 100,000. So it's really easy to know those calculations, and then come over here and just check and make sure that everything's coming out the way you want. The first time I did one, I thought I was doing it right, and I accidentally split in the wrong place. So if you put that split in the wrong place, it's going to mess up all your future stuff that you're splitting. So just test it a couple times, make sure that it's correct before you go on. And then down here at the bottom, you can edit these instructions. You can put whatever you want here for the person you're sending it to. We do have a feed. Don't worry about this right now, but this is API type stuff where it's gonna where you're gonna be able to send data out of the program. And then you have your download CDA here. When you download this, it's gonna put all of these steps on here, but it's also gonna read which ones that you have checked. So if I don't want the calculation on this one, you can uncheck the calculation so it doesn't show up. You can uncheck the step, you can uncheck the step total, like we were talking about earlier. So just make sure that when you do one and test it. Go down here, hit the download, and just look at how it looks. Then do another one, hit the download, just check how it looks. Make sure it's looking exactly how you want it before you go on any further. It looks like the next commission to, oh, that was the last question, sorry. Yep. So hopefully that was good enough for you to kind of play around with it. Todd, feel free to reach out to us and we can definitely help you with some of that stuff too. If you get into individual situations that you're just not sure of, ping us in support and we'll try to work through it with you. Yeah. The recording will be posted probably next week, Todd. So you can have this recording and just, grab the beginning and end of it. Cool. We are out of questions. Let's see what time it is. 11:30.
Do you want to touch on the new features, again, timeline and holiday?
Really quickly before that, Jen, I don't want to interrupt you, but just because the way commission works with, say, reporting, you kind of touched on that a little bit. Do you want to talk about reporting at all? Because I mean, this does
sure.
kind of go hand in hand a little bit.
Yeah, let me do that. So here's reporting. So, and you're going to have different levels of reporting depending on which plan you're on, how much access you have. So on this one, it's a transaction report. Buyer, there's 152 buyers, only 3 closed. These numbers obviously don't make a lot of sense, but in here, what you can do is you set dates. So these are hard dates. This is 1/1/2023 to 6/28/2023. I don't recommend using hard dates like this unless you really have to, okay? Unless there's a real specific reason that you're doing that. What we would prefer is using filter by year, or when you come into date range, year to date, last year, this month, next month, last month. These are going to update automatically. So it's always going to be the next 7 days or the last 7 days. I haven't found a ton of use for the hard date. I mean, there are uses for the hard dates, don't get me wrong. But typically what you want to see is this quarter, next quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter. You want to see those so you can use these so that it's constantly updating in your system and you're not having to go back and change these dates all the time. Okay, so that's dates. Data, you can either do a count, which is the 152, or you can do an amount, which is the actual total of those. So 152 buyers, here's the purchase amount, but you could also do how many people purchase property, right? So you may have 100 transactions that equal $98 million. And then here you got your line chart versus bar chart. So here's a line chart, here's a bar chart. So you can see the difference there. Year referenced. This is actually really important. So what do you want to calculate? Like if this was a buyer in the created date, right? And let's just pretend that the created date of the transaction falls on December 26th, and then the closing date is January the following year. Where do you want that to report? It depends on what the field is, right? So some fields you want it to report on the created date or the inspection date or the appraisal date or whatever it is. A lot of things you're going to want the closing date. So you want if it closed, you want that year that it closed in, not the year that it was created in. So make sure you pay attention to this year reference. And if it's like closed transactions, make sure you don't have contract acceptance date like is here. This is totally, it's going to throw your numbers off considerably, especially if you're doing high volume and you have like, well, let's just say you're doing 30 deals a month and you started all of them in December and they all went to January, it's going to throw your numbers way off. Okay. Let's see what else is here. And then the field, contract client type. Okay. So Let's see, what else do I need to point out here, guys? Anything else that you can think of?
I can't recall if you already covered this, but typically when I'm building reports for teams, if I want to track my internal information for my users versus my agents, I recommend having two different dashboards, two different reports you can toggle between. If you have the user and agent selected, it will count that property twice in your tally count because it's recognizing it for both the agent and the user that were assigned. So
Yeah, so if you're doing internal reporting on your TCs, that you can see how many the implementation demo person here handled buyers and sellers, how many Rory handled buyers and sellers. But what Jenna's saying is if you have me, right? Andrew did this, I'm an agent here, and this person worked on my transaction. Now we have two that it's counting because I did the transaction and they did the transaction. So you typically want to keep your agent reporting separate from your user reporting. I've added this to the idea lab, but could we use this report? But we could use this report in so many other ways if the commission disbursement authorization wasn't hard coded on the form.
I think that's for the commission report, the CDA, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, Brittany.
We use this report in so many. Oh, commissions. Oh, I see what you're saying. The words commission disbursement authorization wasn't hard coded on the form. You could use the form for other things. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, we could look into that. I mean, if it's in the idea lab, we'll take a look at it here shortly because, oh no, we won't because it's what 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, we will. Actually, it'll be coming up here soon. So we'll have our quarterly meeting and we'll take a look. And if it's something we can put in there easily, we definitely will. Just let me take a look at that actually while we're here. Let me see how hard that's going to be. Missions. Oh, did I grab the wrong Taylor? There we go. Okay. Oh, it's this part, right? It's up at the top. Oh, here it is. My screen's just too small. This part right here is what you're talking about, I'm assuming. Just put a yes in the comments if that's what you're talking about, because then we could put, we can just make this editable, but make this the default. I don't think that's going to be a problem, but let me ask the dev team and see if that's an issue. Just out of curiosity, what other reports would you use it for? I mean, I guess you could do pretty much anything, but especially with the widgets here, but let me know. I'd love to hear. All right, cool. All right, 11:40. If we don't have any more questions, we'll go ahead and end early, but if you guys have questions, we'll hang out here for a couple more minutes and see if anyone posts anything.
Got a couple updates.
Sure. Oh, yeah, we do. I'm sorry. Yep, I skipped over your stuff. Matthew distracted me. It's all Matthew's.
You're good. I also want to touch on the new.
It was all me. Sorry.
No, it was good. That was a good branch.
Go ahead, Jenna. What do you want to cover first?
Quick refresh on timeline, holidays, and then if we can just touch on the new layout for the webinar page, it's a little bit easier to navigate.
Okay, so one by one, we'll go timeline first. So instead of having to do this with your critical dates and put them all in one big field section, there are some advantages to having these fields down where they actually belong, like septic fields with septic information down here. So instead of having to do this, so you have an easy view of these, what the dev team did create was this button right here so that you can look at all of your dates. And now you have a timeline of all of your dates. They're all in order, and you can actually click on these as well, and you can go ahead and edit these if you need to. So go ahead and close up. So that was it. I think that was a great, it gives you a lot of flexibility in how you want to set up your fields now. Before, we were pretty limited in how we set up our fields. If you wanted all of those dates in some type of condensed view that we just didn't have, we just didn't have the ability to do. What else did you want me to cover, Jana, besides the webinar thing? What was the second thing?
The holidays for federal holidays.
Oh, holidays. Where are those? I haven't even seen those yet.
Yeah. So global settings will be right below the defaults tab.
Cool. First time I'm getting in here to see them. I heard about them. I saw them on Shane's screen, but I have not seen them here. Where are they at here? And defaults or federal
Right at the
holidays.
bottom. Yep, exactly.
Cool. All right. This is probably one of my favorite things that we've done lately. So all of these will be in here. Jenna, actually, do you want to go over it and I'll scroll through because you know more about it than I do, what you guys land on as far as how many and all that good stuff.
Yeah, oh, that's perfect. So we did add this new feature. This should apply for all pricing plans. If you are still on our V1 pricing, you guys will have the ability to edit the standard federal holidays that we have in the system. So I believe there are 11 standard ones that we have to work with. If you're on our V2 pricing plans, we did increase that capability to 15 total deadlines. Just because we are seeing some users that are working potentially in other areas like Canada, which is exciting, but we do have different holidays for that area. So with this new functionality, what you guys will be able to do is come in and edit the existing federal holidays in your account. And this is a global setting. This will affect all team members, users in the system. And as you go through, you can click in and edit the title of that date. You can click in and edit the rollover options. So when we click on that edit button, it'll expand the screen and you can designate if this holiday lands on a Saturday, if you want it to do nothing, roll back to Friday or roll forward to Monday. Same thing on Sunday. The reason we did this is there are certain holidays, let's say Christmas, for example, if it falls on a weekend, typically a lot of consumers out there would observe the following Saturday or Sunday. So that's giving you guys the option to control that rollback period. We also have the option with the date function to designate if it's a hard-coded date for something like January 1st versus Martin Luther King Jr. Day, in this case, is the third Monday in January. So we do have the option, really good control here for the different types of holidays that we run into. So this was coming up just because we do have, again, differences in holidays. We were seeing that need for Juneteenth. And so
the bane of our existence, Juneteenth. we didn't have that hard coded in the library that we had. So everyone kept asking for it, but all we did was grab the holidays from a library to put them in the code base. And unfortunately, that wasn't a holiday when we grabbed that library. So we couldn't find another library. So they just decided, let's just make this 100% custom, which is, it's a great choice because now you can come in here and add things if you need to.
Mm-hmm. And what this will affect, again, is the federal holiday roll that you set up for your date calculation. So this could apply for task dates, your trigger dates, the dates on your property, your date template calculations. And so when you look at why I would want to make this change is to make sure that if you need to have that observe federal holidays, let's say when we're building our date templates, you know that it's referencing this list of holidays here.
Yeah, and you have the flexibility. How many did you end up landing on, Jenna? Was it, how many did you give them?
15 on our version 2 pricing plans, and that applies for Grow, Pro, or Scale. And then if you're still on V1, I believe it was locked in at the 11.
Yeah, so if you're on pricing V1 still, you're going to get these 11. They're hard coded in there. Well, they're not hard coded in there, but you have 11. And then if you want the extra ones, so if you have 4 extra days that you can add in here, you do need to upgrade to the version 2 pricing. So, and it's just so you know the difference on the base plans, the two base plans are $31, I believe, is an upgrade to get to V2. And it gives you quite a few extra options as far as subtasks. And, you know, there's a ton of stuff in the log that you can check and see what you get with that version 2 pricing.
And if you guys have any questions, again, it's a new feature, reach out to us in support if there's any details that you need further clarification on.
Yep. And then you want to touch on the pricing page as well?
Webinar page, yeah.
Or webinar page, yep. Hold on, I don't know how to get down here. I can't change there we go. Okay. So hate working on the small screen. It's really hard. There we go. Okay. Go ahead, Jana, take it away.
Yeah. So as we were getting started with our group sessions, our webinar page, initially we pretty much hard-coded the registration links there. We have shifted to a different setup. Hopefully it's a little bit easier for you guys to navigate and see our upcoming sessions. It's now going to have these in dated order. And so you can come in and see upcoming sessions. You can also see future sessions there easily now with the available dates and times. It's going to show the next 4 sessions for that event type. So definitely, if you haven't already, come to openaclose.com to your Learn tab to see our webinars here. We're going to focus on a lot of the initial setup with our group sessions, and then have this open Q&A for our Wednesday workshops for some of these advanced strategies you guys are building out.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we got some good features for you guys to play around with. Is that released? That's released, Jenna, the federal holidays in the program?
It is. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, cool. So go play with that. Get your stuff right. Hopefully that will, honestly, we built that for us, not you. No, I'm just kidding. But we really got a lot of support tickets on Juneteenth and things like that, where dates were kind of wonky. So this is going to give us the ability to go in and fix all that stuff. So we should have a much more smooth process around the holidays now, especially when they land on those funny days and they're observed on different days and things like that. It's probably one of my favorite changes that we've made lately. So, well, thanks for being here. We're at 11:50 now, so we'll go ahead and end a little bit early. Hopefully we'll see you same time, same place next week. And thanks as always for being here. Talk to you soon.